Hi, in this video I'm going to be talking about two things. The first one is the noise level versus ISO in the Sony a7S III.
Verus, where did you go in noise?
And the second one is how the Sony a7S III behaves in super low light. So first of all, I'm going to start off by saying that this isn't the greatest test, because what we should have done is overexpose and underexpose for each ISO in order to be able to compare them properly. Let's just look at what we did and what we can get out of this data. But first, which of these two images do you think was shot at the higher ISO? So how much of a difference in noise levels and image clarity does exposing correctly actually make at each ISO? So I have two examples. So let's see if we can get some numbers out of them and crunch them. The y-axis is the noise level, and the x-axis is the plus EV. So we can clearly see that as we overexpose, the noise level drops. And the same thing happens in ISO 80,000 as well. Okay, so I used the same method for the rest of the ISOs, and this is what we got. These are all the numbers I used for the next graph. Everything up to ISO 6400 is underexposed, so we're gonna get a higher amount of noise than we should. Then we see a steep drop in the noise level for ISO 12800, which is what we would expect. And then from ISO 32000 to ISO 80,000, the amount of overexposure increases, so the noise level decreases. Then from ISO 80,000 on, even though it's exposed properly for s-log3, it doesn't matter anymore because the ISOs are so high that it's not gonna decrease the amount of noise it produces. Do you find that you're getting less rich color tones or something to that effect as ISO increases, or is it just my imagination? So conclusions for this part. So make sure you overexpose your s-log3 properly. I'd say just to make sure, keep it at about +2 EV. So that's 2 f-stops overexposed compared to what your camera tells you to do. Especially if you shoot in an ISO that's above 400. The noise pattern looks really bad even if it's low ISO. So the ISO can be as low as 800, but it still produces a really bad noise pattern if you underexpose it. You can get a surprisingly clean and noiseless image at surprising, incredible ISOs like ISO 80,000 if you overexpose your image by about 2 f-stops. As a side note, I shot quite a few scenes for a short feature with the a7S II at ISO 20,000 and 40,000. If you want to see what that looks like, please check out our video in the description. So the first thing for the super low light, we actually took some scenes that we did for Night Terror using Sigma FP. And we tried to shoot the same scenes using the a7S III, the same lens, the same settings. Okay, super low light night outside. So when shooting outside, I'd stick to 12,800 ISO because it's definitely the cleanest. And unfortunately, when it's pitch black and you don't really have where to get any more light, it doesn't really help if you try to push up the ISO. Even if you get a little bit more detail, maybe it's not worth it because the noise is going to be really crazy. Maybe I think you can push it up to ISO 20,000. That noise level seems acceptable to me. So that's it for today. Thank you f64 for lending us the Sony a7S3, and thank you guys for watching. And now I'm gonna do this in Romanian.